everybody. Welcome back to episode 3. And last time we talked about how do you know you are meant to be a project manager? Today, we're going to talk about how do you get your first project management job. And joining me today is the fabulous Nada Buhendi. Nada, thank you so much for being here.
Kayla, I am so excited about this conversation because there are a lot of people who are very talented at what they do, and they've been thinking about getting into PM. Maybe they have been doing the role unofficially, or maybe that's just how they want to grow their career, especially after 5 years of experience.
Mhm.
So I know that you have an incredible story, and you are the perfect example of getting into project management.
Thanks.
So, what I want to learn from you is what was the first thing that you did in order to be able to get your project management role?
The first thing that I did is go to an expert in positioning. I hired a career coach to help align my experience with the type of roles that I wanted to land.
Yeah, because I hear a lot, from people about how they're unable to see their transferable skills.
Mhm. I hear it all the time.
So I know that you work with a lot of professionals who are exactly where you were. How many years ago was that?
This was, oh goodness, this was 2020.
2020. It's
Yeah.
actually quite, incredible that in such a short amount of time, like less than 6 years, that you've been able to go from, I know your backstory, and for anyone who doesn't know the backstory, please go back into the previous episodes and watch them. But it's just very admirable how you went from decorator to breaking into corporate to becoming a project manager to now being a senior program manager. Um, so back when you were trying to prove yourself and get into the door, right? It sounds like you hired a career coach to help you with this.
I did. Yeah.
And it sounds like, the biggest thing that you were trying to figure out is being able to see your transferable skills.
Yes. Yes. And it's because I knew I could do the job. I knew I had the skills. I just didn't know how to translate them
Yeah.
from point A to point B in a way that would resonate with
Mhm.
recruiters and hiring managers. I knew I needed to get more visibility and I needed help with that.
Hmm. Why do you think that's so difficult for people to see? I mean, you've been doing all of these amazing things in your career. You've been the one
Mhm.
performing, those experiences. So why do you feel it's such a hurdle for people?
I feel like it's a few things. I feel like the big one is sometimes people don't truly understand what it means to be a project manager, the day in, the day out, what it really looks like. And I think a big part of that is PMI perfection standards. So the Project
Mm,
Management Institute putting forth this perfect standard for what ideal project management looks like if everything went right and people were robots and the world was just simply perfect. And it doesn't work that way, but I think people kind of look at project management from the outside if they've never truly had the title, and they think just that. I'm on the outside looking in, and they just think that there's something magical that people with the title of project manager have that they don't have. And it's difficult, as we say, to see the label when you're inside of the jar and they're so far inside of it, they just can't see the label.
okay, so when you worked with that career coach to help you see your transferable skills, what was the impact on you?
Mm. I remember the initial impact that it had was just this massive boost in my confidence. Looking at my experience, the things that I had actually done, not made up. Nothing was made up. It was all true. It was all real things I had done. And looking at it through the lens of project management, through the jargon of project management, that's another big one I think that really turns people off, is the jargon and the language. Looking at it that way, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I am qualified for this. I do have the experience and I've been doing it this whole time.
So I'm trying to like understand this from the lens of someone, let's say, who's trying to get their first project management roles. Um, I know that when I was starting out my career, some of the things that I was doing didn't feel like projects. And
Mhm.
knowing that you were a cake decorator and you weren't, necessarily working in corporate, you did eventually, get into corporate. How the heck did you translate your experience in a project-based way?
Yeah. I think where this PMI perfection, it's not always the best way to look at things. What I do encourage people to do is look at the definition of a project. A
Hmm.
project is something that is time bound, it starts and stops, and then it results in something unique. And when you look at it from that perspective, a lot of what you have done is a project, because organizations are project based. That's all they do is they execute projects, whether they formally call it that or not. Then it doesn't matter if they formally call it that or not. That is what they're doing, is executing projects. So if you have at least 5 years of experience in the corporate world, then chances are you've been a part of a project and you've probably even led one, at least one, and you don't even know it. They don't have to be long. These don't have to be massive organizational transformation types of things to count as a project.
Wow. Okay. So after you figured that out and you worked with that career coach, and I'm assuming you had a beautiful resume that conveyed all the transferable skills,
Mm-hmm.
was that enough? Like, did you just apply and get the job? Like, what happened? Because
That's a
I
great
know I hear a lot of people in the market talk about, oh my God, I'm applying to 100 jobs. I'm not getting any traction. Um, and I also hear a lot of people who tell me that they use AI
one.
and they're, putting all those transferable skills, or they've worked with a resume writer and they have this beautiful resume and they've been applying and there's still no traction.
Mhm.
So what
Yeah.
is it? What else is it that you did differently that got you that traction?
Yeah. I have this concept of the PM readiness iron triangle, and reframing your experience or having the experience is just one part of that. As project
Mm.
managers, we love triangles, right? We have the iron triangle of scope, schedule, and budget. So I've taken that concept and I've translated it to careers. So the three arms of this triangle are experience, credentials, and network. And my philosophy is that you have to have at least two of those strongly positioned in two of those. So for me, I leaned into the experience part because, again, being in corporate for at least 5 years meant that I had that experience. I also leaned heavily into the credentials aspect. Not every credential under the sun, one credential, and that is the PMP. And that massively opened doors for me.
Interesting.
Mm.
So I'm actually curious, how did you come up with that number that you need a minimum of 5 years of experience?
So I came up with that number because to qualify for the PMP, you have to have at least 3 years of
Mm.
non-overlapping project management experience. And that non-overlapping is the key because once you start to look at the definition of a project and what it is and notice that you've done a ton of projects, there is a lot of overlap. And sometimes there are some true times where you're simply executing and not necessarily doing what might be counted as part of a project. So I've added a couple years to that just to provide that little bit of a buffer for all of that overlap. So I basically start with the PMP requirements and just add a little bit of time onto that.
That makes sense. And I love how ethical you are. And you're not like promising people and giving them false hope that they're going to get that, immediate transformation without actually getting that practical experience. Now,
Mhm.
I'm sure that people sitting here and listening to this podcast, the question that might be circling in their head is, how do I know that this counts as experience?
Mm. So it counts as experience if it ticks a few boxes. First of all, it starts and it stops. Not it starts and it stops, and then, we do it again a month later and it starts and it stops. That's operations. Like, it happens repeatedly. This is something, it has a start date, it has an end date, and it results in something unique. That is the unique part. That's how it differentiates from operations. So when you look at it those two ways, that's the first part. Now, the PMP application is going to look at it and make sure that it's not just things you're doing from an individual contributor. And for those of you not watching it, I'm doing air bunnies, individual contributor. um, and it's very important to frame it in terms of a team. So here's the thing. In an organization, almost nothing happens in a vacuum. You're
Mm,
getting information from someone, you're reporting to someone, you're working with someone, you're communicating with someone. That's your team. So if you hit those three things, it starts and stops, something unique happens, and you're working with at least one other person, that's going to tick all of your boxes for a project. And that is the relevant project experience.
and do those 5 years have to be in corporate?
So here is the thing about those 5 years. Sometimes people, I've seen things out there like, oh, anything counts for PMP, project management experience, even, remodeling your house.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't count. It doesn't count. Now, where people get confused is they think it must only be corporate. So I'm going to put a little asterisk here. If you volunteered at a formal organization like a nonprofit and led an initiative there. So for me, I volunteered at a local PMI chapter and I led an initiative, a data initiative. That counts. You're not getting paid. It's technically not in corporate, but it is in a professional capacity. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So, I'm hearing, your pathway is that you worked with that career coach, you had the beautiful, resume, and you were able to confidently, create that transferable experience and reframe it. What is the second step in order for you to land those interviews for the project manager roles that you actually want?
To land the interviews, it's very much about positioning,
Hmm.
about making sure that your experience is positioned and aligned with the types of roles that you're going for. Now, that alone can move the needle a little bit for you. So
Mm.
in my example, I got a recruiter that reached out to me because my LinkedIn profile, my resume, they were so on point and so on brand, and I picked a very specific type of job that I was going for. What I wish I had done better and what would have moved the needle for me that much quicker is to build a network that opens doors for you. Because once you do that, that's how you get referrals. And that is your golden ticket right there. And that's a lesson I actually learned the hard way and started to lean on later, but that is my biggest lesson learned from my experience. So if you put those two things together, your reframed experience and your network, the speed at which your career accelerates is astronomical.
I can definitely see that. But there are a lot of introverts out there, Kayla, who
Yes.
don't enjoy networking.
Yeah.
And the common thing that I believe both of us heard and keep hearing is, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging. I don't want to feel like I'm
Mm.
begging for a job. I don't want to feel like I'm an opportunist just asking for favors.
Yes.
Do you have a framework? Well, maybe let's answer it this way. Can you think of a client who was resistant to networking that you've helped, and how did you help him overcome this, or her?
Yes. So I hear this all the time. A couple things. My people I work with will say, I don't want to sound like a pick me girl or a pick me person. I don't want to sound like a used cars salesman. I don't want to feel like I'm using people for something, being sleazy, something like that. And a lot of times I also hear, well, I don't have anything to offer these people. Frank, he had a band manager background.
Wow.
And when we were trying to get him into his first PM position, which he landed, by the way, as a senior PM, we had a conversation about networking, and it was scary. It was scary for him. He was a little bit resistant to it. So I just gave him some micro assignments. And as he did that, he started to see some traction. He started to see some uptick, and seeing that uptick motivated him to do a little bit more. And soon, before you know it, he had so many referrals
Wow.
for job interviews. We actually had to start having a conversation about which one should he prioritize and which one should he turn down,
My
because he
goodness.
didn't have enough bandwidth to prepare for all of them.
Gosh, that's incredible. I mean, wow. So you're telling me that this guy, he did not have the project management title. Did he have the PMP?
He did not.
He did
No.
not have the
He
PMP.
did not, and that's where
Oh,
my
that's
triangle concept
crazy.
comes in, right? You gotta be strong in 2. He was strong in
Wow.
experience and in his network.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he went from not having the title, not having the PMP,
Mhm,
breaking into PM, and
mhm.
not at an entry level role, but a
Yeah.
senior project management role.
Yep. 100%, you got it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he was resistant to network, but ended up actually honing that skill
Yes.
to
Yeah,
the
he got
point
very good
where
at it.
he generated more opportunities that he can handle. I mean, gosh, if you're listening to this, I don't know about you, but I would want that.
Right? Yeah.
I will want a lot of people knocking on my door and me
Mhm.
turning them down and picking and
Absolutely.
choosing
Yeah,
versus
think
applying
about,
to
like, the
100
confidence
jobs.
boost that gives you.
Yeah, that is insane.
Mhm.
Gosh. So I want to just take a step back for a minute because it sounds like I don't hear this from every single career coach. A lot of career coaches, they talk about networking, but they don't necessarily teach it. And they just, teach you to apply to lots of roles and they tell you that it's a numbers game. But it sounds like you're really good at networking.
Mhm.
So, how did that impact your career, Kayla? Like, because you went through the same trajectory where you broke into PM, and you did all these things that you teach today. I am curious to know how networking has changed your life.
Yes, I love talking about this. So, we've talked about this a little bit, but I'm going to rehash really quickly. I landed my first project manager job, and then a year later, 9 months later, got put on a PIP. And this is when I realized that I was deficient, to put it a nice way, deficient in my network. I had no one to really help
Mm,
me. Um, so I it was so uncomfortable, Nada. I was like, I am never gonna let myself be in that position ever again.
Yeah.
So what I did at that point is I decided to offer something. My offer to these people that I was going to make part of my network was to create a space, create a room. I created a mastermind, which is a group of close knit individuals that meet every so often to help everybody move the needle in a certain direction. And mine was legal operations because that's where I am. So people in that industry, and Nana, when I tell you I reach for the stars, I'm not even kidding. I started reaching out to directors,
Wow.
VPs, the people who wrote the book on legal project management, because I just decided that, I mean, the worst thing that was going to happen is they were going to tell me no. As a matter of fact, I got a shocking amount of yeses, including from some of the biggest names in my industry. And now I have these people who would go to bat, and because they're highly connected, I'm highly connected. So they will go to bat for me. I see them often. I touch base with them often because I truly care about these people. They're my friends now. And it was just such a massive lesson learned to get so connected with these people that they would, I believe they'd move mountains if I needed help in my career trajectory.
Wow. You essentially created, a community around you
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
of trusted advisors. That's
100%.
beautiful. And you know what I love about the story is a lot of people I talk to tell me that you need to be privileged, you need to have the right connections,
Mhm.
as if you need to be born with them. But gosh, I mean, you came from a completely different world, being a cake decorator, to now being surrounded by experienced experts in their field, people at the director level and above, and you belong in that room with them.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
didn't come born with this. Like
Yes.
you worked your way up. You created that for yourself. So when I hear someone, talking about how icky it is and how they don't want to do it and only people who are privileged, have a
Mhm.
network, this is an important lesson. Like
Yeah,
if you are a high achiever and you want this for yourself, you can make it happen. You just need to learn how to do it effectively.
exactly. And what I love about this, so one person in my network who I met through, doing this intentionally said to me, he said, luck is what happens when opportunity meets preparation.
Wow.
You can't control the opportunity part, right? You can get more adjacent to opportunity, but you can't ultimately control that. But you can control the preparation, which is what I teach people to do, is that preparation part. And these people also who are in my network, they have gotten me speaking opportunities in my niche, which has helped me become an authority in
Wow.
legal operations. And that is what is the beauty of this, is when you can reframe your experience, see those transferable skills and translate them into the right language, and you get those people that can open doors for you and get you the opportunities. That's how you become an authority in your space. And that is how you accelerate getting more interviews and more opportunities in your space. So it's this flywheel effect.
Yeah. That's incredible. To me, like, this isn't just about, hey, I need to learn these skills to get a job. This is like something that you carry with you throughout your entire career
Yes.
and makes you more successful so that you don't just land a role, you progress and you don't have to work hard or chase, opportunities. And that's part of being an authority.
Mhm.
Okay, so you were able to get these interviews after you learned how to reframe your experience and you built yourself an incredible network. So, what else did you have to do in order to get those $100,000 and above offers?
Yes. This is where the PMP comes in. And it's such a hot debate right now in the project management community. PMP or not PMP, or people are credential stretching, like
Yeah.
stretching their experience. And first of all, I mean, I don't listen to the naysayers. You can get a job without the PMP. Frank is an example. I have plenty of clients that are examples. I've also had clients come to me with their PMP that are having difficulty landing jobs because they're not strong in the other two arms of the triangle that I referred to. But for me specifically, getting that PMP when I didn't have a strong network was huge, because what that did for me is it massively boosted my confidence to see my experience on paper, and then to pair that with the fact that I qualified for, sat for, and passed the PMP. That was more than enough for my brain to be like, okay, yeah, this is legitimate. You are a project manager. You have multiple pieces of paper that say it and demonstrate it. And that was just hugely confidence boosting for me. And when you show up with more confidence, I tell you what, Nada, that changes the game for how you interview, how you show up, how you network, all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that before we were filming this podcast, you were sharing with me a story of a client, and her name is Zoe, who
Mhm.
took a different certification.
Yes.
It was the CAPM certification.
Mhm.
Um, what happened with her, and did you help her, with the PMP application? And what would you advise someone who is considering another certification because maybe they feel that the PMP is too hard?
Yeah. So yes, Zoe took the CAPM, the Certified Associate for Project Management. Certified Associate for Project Management. So she didn't think that her experience qualified. One of the big ones for her was she had done a lot of nonprofit work. She thought it didn't qualify. And not only that, she was downplaying her experience. Like, oh,
Oh,
this isn't real project management experience, this and that. So she decided to take the CAPM, which I don't recommend
wow.
unless you are truly a recent grad. Take the PMP, because the CAPM does nothing but scream that you don't have the right experience as a project manager, because
Yeah.
you don't have to have 3 years of experience. Anyone can take and sit for the CAPM, and if they study, they will pass it. The PMP is different because you must demonstrate your 3 years of project management experience. So Zoe and I sat down, we examined her past experience, we figured out what did qualify as PMP worthy experience. We mapped it out, we translated it into PMI language, and sure enough, her application got approved.
Wow. And I can only imagine what would have happened if she had found you earlier
Yeah.
and she didn't have to spend all of that time and money
Mhm. Money,
chasing
yeah.
after like a credential that at the
Mhm.
end of the day wouldn't actually open doors or prove her credibility.
Yes. 100%.
Wow.
She wasted that, and she said herself, she was like, "Oh, I wasted the all that money on taking the CAPM," because you have to pay for these certifications.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for her and for her to finally realize that she actually is qualified to get the
Mhm.
PMP. She just didn't see it. And
100%.
that's really the power of working with someone who is an expert, who's gone through that path, who is trained, to help you, who's a professional. They can see things that you might not be able to see because, you're inside the jar and you can't read the label from the outside.
Mhm.
So, wow, your clients are so lucky to work with you, Kayla. I have one more question before we end. Um, have you ever worked with someone who didn't land a project management role and landed something else?
I have, yes. I worked with Harvey, and he came to me, just at a crossroads. He's like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I feel like I'm stuck where I am. And I think project management I think that's the answer. So Harvey and I started working together. We did all these things to reframe his experience. And yet, in the end, he decided this does not quite feel right for me. And I don't force people into boxes if they don't belong in that box, because deep down, you know, I am meant to be a project manager, or you'll feel that little gut feeling that says, maybe this isn't it. And that's okay. So once we discovered this, and Harvey came to me and said, hey, Kayla, this is how I'm feeling, and we had a conversation, we pivoted into something that made more sense for him. And he ended up landing as a director, I believe it was director at a major corporate firm. And he is so happy there. I'm so happy for him, and I'm so happy that he didn't stuff himself into a box, and that he felt comfortable coming to me to say, hey, Kayla, this has been great, but my gut tells me something else.
And it sounds like in the end, he did land a project management adjacent role. And
Mm,
so at the end of the day, like it's not always about the title, it's also about like a role that actually lights you up, that
yes.
creates the career progression for you and allows you to do work that is meaningful, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, Kayla, you have amazing success stories. Now, I know that you have people lined up working with you, and you
Mhm.
can't work with every single person out there. What would
Unfortunately.
you say for someone who's listening to this and they're not sure if they're quite ready yet to
Mhm.
work with you? What is the criteria for you to say like, yes, we're definitely the right fit. You
Mhm.
have the mindset, the behaviors, the qualifications, the experiences for me to be able to help you.
Yes. So, one of the things we've talked about a couple times is 5 years of professional experience. Doesn't necessarily have to be in corporate, it can be nonprofit or volunteering, but that is an absolute must. The type of people who come to me are hungry. They're ready to work. They know what they want, and they're going to do what they need to do to hit that goal. Those are the people that are the most successful. Another criteria that I have, if we're going to be very successful working together, is that you be located in the United States. And I say that because I am not plugged in to job markets across the world. And I don't want to do someone a disservice by pretending otherwise. So I very much focus in the US and Canada. Beyond that, I tend to point people to other coaches because it's just not my area of expertise.
I love that. I love that you are very, honest in terms of what's when you're in your wheelhouse and what isn't. And then if you have someone who is not sure and is going through imposter syndrome,
Mm.
it sounds like you offer a call that basically determines if they're a fit or not. What do you call that?
Yes, that is the PM path diagnostic. And we do three things in that call. First of all, we're going to figure out what you truly want and the direction that you want to go in. We're going to figure out what is blocking you. And then we're going to figure out what are the next steps to move you towards your ideal goal as quickly as possible.
That's such a valuable opportunity. And I honestly recommend this to anyone who's listening to this who is a high achiever, who wants to grow, and who doesn't want to waste time trying to running all these experiments. Because I mean, look at all some of the stories that you've heard. We've heard, an example of someone who ended up, chasing the wrong certification and wasting time. And you don't also want to be that person who is not leveraging the power of networking. And honestly, this is something that you really need to learn to do effectively. And you can't just go cold calling and DMing a whole bunch of people. And if you're the kind of person who has a growth mindset, there's nothing wrong with not being good at something.
Mm-hmm.
What's
Absolutely.
important is to be self-aware and ask for help. And so
Yes.
why, figure this out on your own when you have someone who can help you get there faster? Incredible story, Kayla. You have literally, been an example because you've gone through this yourself and now you teach clients how to do this. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you for being here, Nada. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. And in our next episode, we are going to dive deep into this PM readiness iron triangle concept that I have. And we're going to focus specifically on networking or tribe building or creating your own personal board of directors, whatever you want to call it. That is what we are going to focus on, creating those relationships that move the needle forward for you and open doors. So I look forward to seeing everyone here next time.